Hello and welcome back to Toby Jones Talks Music. Today I'm going to talk about what I've listened to in June. And this isn't just me jumping on the trend, because there are a few channels that I've seen that do monthly, weekly playlists. But this is my own little spin on it, because I tried something new in June and I thought that I'd talk to you all about it, and gives me the chance to talk about some new albums that I've listened to, or at least albums that are new to me. Looking at this list, none of these were released after 95, so 30 years old, but new albums to me nevertheless. Now you can see down to just this side of me there, you can see where my finger's pointing and the CD rack there. Those are all the albums that I've listened to maybe once or twice but would like to revisit. I never feel comfortable with putting something in the shelf at the top of the shelf to say, right, I've listened to it, I'm going to park it, after probably listening to it a couple of times and becoming familiar with it. But as you can see with the rack there of probably, I don't know, 400 or 500 CDs, to do all of those is going to take some time, and if you're anything like me, you go in and out of artists and nothing really gets done. And in terms of listening to new music, I find the only time, not the only opportunity I get, but the one opportunity I do use is when I work from home on a Wednesday, so I work from home one day a week, and I tend to just listen to 3 or 4 albums, whether they're just really what I fancy at the time, whether that be albums that are new to me, albums I want to revisit, classic albums, greatest hit stuff, whatever I want to listen to on that day. And really that's just listening to stuff in the background, and if it's a new album you might think, oh, you know, I like that, pick up stuff you like, but it wasn't really doing anything in terms of reducing that revisit pile or introducing me to new music, which I found was a problem for a little while. So I had a bit of a brainwave, and that was after on one Wednesday listening to this album by Bruce Springsteen, Nebraska, from 1982. I listened to this on one of the Wednesdays I was working from home. Not a big Bruce fan. I don't dislike him, but I haven't explored much of his music. Maybe that would probably been the better thing to say. And I listened to it on a Wednesday and I thought, I want to revisit this, but it's going to take a week for me to revisit, and then I might not listen to it again. And when I'm working from home, I'm probably not paying that much attention to it. So I had a bit of a brainwave. I thought, right, could I listen to it in the car on the way to and from work? Because when you're driving and there's no other distraction, you can just purely focus on that music. Plus, it takes the time away from driving to work. And I also found that listening to my normal playlist driving to and from work, which is just purely a USB of everything I've got, started to become a little bit monotonous. So I wasn't really focusing on the music. I was thinking about work, driving to and from work, or worrying about things, and silly things really. So I thought, right, I need to have something to focus on while I'm driving. And I'm not really a podcast type of person, so I thought, well, let's go keep with the music and listen to these albums in the car. We don't have CD players in modern cars anymore, so I thought, how am I going to do this? That's the best way to do this and make best use of my physical media. So I got one of these out, one of my old, well, I didn't really use it much, but this is one of the old iPod Touches I've got, sitting in a drawer, doing nothing. I use an iPod Classic to put all my music on when I go on walks and stuff like that, but I didn't want to carry that around with me in the car each day, particularly if it got damaged or lost. That's like my prime possession, the iPod Classic. So this iPod Touch wasn't doing anything, so I thought, I'm going to put a few albums on this, not much, because I think, especially when you've got a lot of choice, like that CD rack there, or when you've got, I don't know, 500 albums on your iPod, when I go out for a walk, unless I've got something unpremeditated to listen to, it can become a little bit too much choice, and inevitably you kind of just keep skipping between things. So I thought, I'm going to put 5 or 6 albums on here and gravitate towards whatever I fancy. And first off, it was Bruce Springsteen's Nebraska. So the start of June, pretty well, was when I started this experiment, and I thought I'll start with one album and then maybe move on to another. So this was the first album that I experimented with. So it was Bruce Springsteen's Nebraska, and although I had listened to it once on the Wednesday before, was I paying much attention? No, not a massive amount really. This is very much a stripped back album, an acoustic album, just Bruce himself really. And although I didn't really realise it at the time, it wasn't until I listened to something else, I just thought maybe the iPod was a little bit low in volume. I had to have this highest volume in the car to make it out and really listen to it, but it is a quiet album. Now, my favourite Bruce album, and I don't know many of Bruce Springsteen's albums, is this, Bruce Springsteen, Tunnel of Love. And this is sort of, you could maybe put this in almost like a adult contemporary bracket possibly some of the songs. My favourite track off this, one of my favourite Bruce tracks, is One Step Up. But there are a lot of good tracks off this. And Nebraska is in a similar-ish vein. It's more stripped down. But I have to say, I enjoyed this. The first listen, or maybe first two listens, I thought, it's okay, it's decent. But I did like this. Particularly Atlantic City, Mansion on the Hill, Johnny 99, Highway Patrolman, and State Trooper. And as I've listened to this a few times and revisited it a little bit, I do also... There's not a bad track on this album, to be fair. Funnily enough, I'm not over enamoured with the first track. I don't want to spoil the rest of this episode, but this is probably the only one of the albums that I've listened to this month that I've actually gone and revisited. I've noticed that as I've listened to more and more albums, I haven't really gone back to them. But this one, I wouldn't say it's a fantastic album, but actually this is quite a nice go-to album. Just when you want something a bit more chilled out, you don't want something that's hard rock, but then you don't want something that's like too easy listening, if that makes sense. This is a nice happy medium, but I enjoyed listening to this one, Nebraska. So where did I go next? Well, I was reading a little bit up about Nebraska, and I don't know what site it was, whether it was Wikipedia or another review I was reading, but it seemed to suggest that there was almost like a trilogy of albums like this in Springsteen's career, where it was more stripped back. And the first one of those was, I think this was 1995, this was The Ghost of Tom Joad. Now, I was a little bit prejudiced going into this because my dad's quite a Springsteen fan, and he said, God, you're never listening to that, are you? Because I told him about Nebraska. He said, you're never going to listen to that, because I'd premeditated I was going to listen to this on the day after in the car. He said, it's a bloody awful album, it's dreadful. And I thought, well, he said that about things before, and I've liked them, so here we go. I wouldn't call it dreadful, but after one listen, I gave up with it. The first 4, possibly 5 tracks on this album are decent. Youngstown was the only one I've really revisited since. But I have to say, the rest of the tracks, I don't know if it was because I probably listened to about the first half of the album on the way to work. So it's about 25 minutes each way to work. So it works out quite nicely to listen to an album in the time when you leave home in the morning. And then when you get back, you've pretty much listened to the album. But it was tricky to listen to this, and it was a warm day. I had got the windows open, so I couldn't hear it fully. But like the some of the tracks on the second half of the album just seem to blend into one. And although this is stripped back, it is interesting. This just didn't have any feel to me or anything at all, unfortunately. So this was one that I only listened to once, and that was it. And I thought, no, I'm done with this. I'm not going to revisit it again. Because my nervousness was that I was going to listen to this again and put me off the whole experiment altogether. Because if I'm not enjoying something, I thought, I'll just go back to my normal albums. And I thought, I really wanted to try this out, particularly for the month of June. And I thought, that's put me off, that has. So that wasn't great. If you're a lover of this album, please let me know down in the comments that I need to revisit it, but I haven't just yet. The other one in the trilogy of albums, which I didn't listen to, because of what I said about The Ghost of Tom Joad, I thought if I listen to that again, or I listen to another one that's not great, it's going to turn me off this. And that is Devils and Dust. So I haven't listened to this yet. It is still on, well, it's on the revisit pile, but actually I haven't listened to it at all. So again, if this is one worth listening to, please do let me know. But yeah, that kind of put me off Bruce a bit, because I could have easily just gone, right, I'm going to start with Nebraska, and then go through, maybe sort of forwards from there. That might have been the better idea. But I was turned off Bruce Springsteen from there. Not altogether, but continuing with that Bruce Springsteen lineup that I had gone with. So, I moved on to something a little bit different. This was one I had listened to once before. This is the same as the one after that, actually. And this is Asia's second album, Alpha. Now, the CD case is going to look a bit strange because there's no spine, there's no back cover. I bought this in a charity shop a few years ago, actually, and it was just a sleeve. So it was just the album sleeve and the disc. I thought I'll put it in a case. It looks a bit better. And I do really like this. This is great. I really enjoy this. I didn't, from the first time I listened to it, again at home when working from home, I didn't get the same feeling out of this. But this was very much like Nebraska. Try again. And you do get something out of this. It is definitely enjoyable. The one day I drove to my sister's, which is nearly about an hour away, and there was a bit of traffic, so in the drive there and back, this is quite a short album. I think it's only about 40 minutes. I probably got 2.5 listens done of this album on that day. So you've got Don't Cry, The Smile Has Left Your Eyes, Never in a Million Years, My Own Time, I'll Do What I Want, The Heat Goes On, Eye to Eye, The Last to Know, True Colours, Midnight Sun, and Open Your Eyes. True Colours was the first one that caught my eye because I thought it did something a little bit different. But I have to say, most of these tracks, again, are quite good. Never in a Million Years, My Own Time, The Heat Goes On, Eye to Eye, and probably True Colours, I would say, are my favourites off this album. But this is another one that I mentioned a little bit earlier. Unlike Nebraska, can't say I've really revisited it since I've listened to it. Again, enjoyed it, and probably half the tracks will end up in my overall playlist. I don't quite think it's as good as this, personally. When you look at the likes of Only Time Will Tell, One Step Closer, and Time Again, does this match up? Probably not, but from what I read about it, I don't think the band liked it particularly because it was a bit of a rushed follow-up. It's not as bad as that at all. It's a solid album. It's an enjoyable album, but again, I haven't revisited it since. So I probably had about, 4 or 5 days with that, and then went to something else that I'd listened to once, and I can't remember what this was off the back of, to be honest. I can't remember what inspired me to go and re-listen to a bit of the Moody Blues. Now, it wasn't the vinyl that I put in the car, but I haven't got this on CD, so I thought I'd show off the LP edition. I listened to this. I still remember, isn't it funny when you just remember random moments? I was sat in this room, watching some football. It was Nottingham Forest against Newcastle back in February, and I thought, well, I'll play this in the background. I just fancied playing it. It was one I bought a while ago. I really like Long Distance Voyager. I know that album's got a lot of fans. I've listened to the stuff after this as well, so The Other Side of Life and Sur La Mer. Possibly those are ones I might need to revisit because I kind of listened to those a couple of times a long while ago and dismissed them. I wasn't very enamoured with those at all. But I really like Long Distance Voyager, so I thought, well, what can the present give us? And again, when I listened to it the first time, that time ago, it didn't do anything for me, to be quite honest. I'm going to refer to the iPod Touch for the track listing. So you've got the present, Moody Blues. So this is a 10-track album, and I have to say, when I first listened to it, I thought, God, you can tell this is the 80s. And it almost took me back a little bit to the likes of The Other Side of Life and Sur La Mer. Is it Your Wildest Dreams on The Other Side of Life? That was the popular track, wasn't it? And then I Know You're Out There Somewhere, is that on Sur La Mer? Didn't like any of it. Didn't like any of it on those albums. And this one on The Present was somewhat similar. I mean, the first half of the album, it was almost eye-rolling, like, come on. But I thought, no, I'm going to give it a chance. I'm going to give it 2 or 3 listens and see if it turns out to be something decent. And to be fair, it's half decent. It is, it's half decent. But again, it's not great. So you've got Blue World, it's okay. Meet Me Halfway is okay. Sitting at the Wheel's quite a cool track. I did watch the music video for that on YouTube. I don't ever need to see that again. John Lodge and Justin Hayward properly enjoying being in the 80s, but oh God, it doesn't look great now. Going Nowhere. Hole in the World, I think, is an instrumental before Under My Feet. That's a decent track. It's Cold Outside of Your Heart, is that? It cuts off, I think, there. Running Water, I Am, and then Sorry are decent, but again, it's not by any means the best Moody Blues album, but decent at best. But again, I haven't revisited this at all after listening to it in the car for those few days. I then went to Meat Loaf, because I've been reading Meat Loaf's biography by Mick Wall, and I also watched a video on Sea Tranquility about Meat Loaf, and it was the UK connection, and Simon Bray was on about this album. So I haven't got this on CD at all, or vinyl, but this is one I've got on my iTunes library. It's Blind Before I Stop. And I have to say, I did quite enjoy this. Again, I haven't revisited it since. Well, I tell a lie, actually. I have, to a degree. I've listened to a few of the tracks since, and they're not quite as good on their own as they are in the album. So I like Execution Day. That's a good track. Takes a while to get going. Rock and Roll Mercenaries, I liked that on the Live at Wembley album, which I'll actually use this opportunity to talk about. So, Meat Loaf did a live album in the late 80s called Live or Live at Wembley, and I didn't know about this at all until it was covered in the book. And that was one I thought, oh, I'm going to listen to that straight away because I do like live albums. It's only been the last few years I've really got into live albums, but I do like live albums. So I thought, well, I'll listen to that. And it's a lot of the sort of Bat Out of Hell stuff. But I think on a bonus EP, you've got Rock and Roll Mercenaries and Masculine, both from this album. And I really enjoyed that live album. Again, I haven't listened to it again, but I've only listened to it once. Rock and Roll Mercenaries, I really enjoyed that on the live album. Here, I can't quite recall now, but this again very much sounds of its time, the 80s format. And Rock and Roll Mercenaries is almost like a bit of a disco, I want to call it maybe even hip-hop style track. Yeah, it's okay. Getting Away with Murder's a decent track. One More Kiss, that's decent. Blind Before I Stop is good. Burning Down, I enjoy that in the album itself, but listening to that in isolation isn't great. But as part of the album, it's okay. Standing on the Outside, I can't say I recall that one. Masculine, again, with the album, the vibe of the album, I quite enjoyed it. Man and a Woman, that's decent. Special Girl, not so much. Rock and Roll Hero, I really enjoyed that. And this was an album, I have to say, when I listened to the album itself, I did enjoy it. When I've revisited a few of the tracks afterwards, they've not been so good, just in isolation, but I had a really good time with Blind Before I Stop. I did enjoy it. In May, I listened to a couple of times, because I'd never properly listened to it. I'd listened to Bat Out of Hell 2. And about the first 3 or 4 tracks, so you've got I Would Do Anything for Love, and Life is a Lemon, Rock and Roll Dreams Come Through, and It Just Won't Quit. They're pretty good, but the rest of the album, I wasn't that bothered about. So Blind Before I Stop, I'd maybe put it in a similar position to Bat Out of Hell 2. Possibly. But again, I haven't revisited Blind Before I Stop since I've listened to it in the car. Maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe that I'm just listening, I'm just moving on to something else. I'm conscious, as I say. I think I listened to Blind Before I Stop 3 or 4 times. And again, I had a good time with it. But then I moved on the Friday to something different. So I'm going to cover this quickly. When I was at home on the Wednesday, and there's a reason why, I listened to this. Dream of the Blue Turtle. This is one I've listened to several times. It's my favourite Sting solo album, particularly that mid-section of the album. Shadows in the Rain, We Work the Black Seam, and Consider Me Gone. I love those 3 tracks, really good tracks. I listened to those on the Wednesday, and then an album that I don't know all that well, I have to say, 10 Summoner's Tales, which ironically there are 12 tracks on 10 Summoner's Tales. This was one I probably only knew the hits off, really. If I Ever Lose My Faith in You, Fields of Gold, 7 Days. I'll tell a funny story about that, actually. I had a British Racing Green Mini as my first car. It has gone now, unfortunately. It failed its MOT and it got to the end of its life. But over the winter one of the years, it was a few years ago now, there was a slight gap in the windscreen. So I was off work for Christmas and I didn't really drive. Oh, I don't think I drove the car at all over Christmas. Got back in the car the first day of January, the first working day of January, and the radio was just stuck. It turns out that some water had got in and just knackered all the systems, the electronics of the radio altogether. It did mean, however, that it was stuck on the CD that was in there, which was the very best of Sting and the Police. And 7 Days was on that, and I think If I Ever Lose My Faith in You was on that. And I was stuck with those songs over and over and over again. Fortunately, I haven't heard them for a while now, but I did get sick of them to a degree. Shape of My Heart, actually, is one that was a massive hit for Sting. At least one of his most popular songs on Spotify, anyway. But I have to say, I didn't really know it all that well myself. Again, this is a decent album. I listened to this on Friday last week, purely because I went to see Sting last Friday at Cannock Chase Forest as part of the Forest Live event. Really enjoyed it. Another artist that I wanted to tick off my list, so I was overjoyed that Sting was coming round to the Knock to come and play Cannock Chase, a place that he said he hadn't been to before, one of the few places in the world he hadn't been to before. But this album, 10 Summoner's Tales, I also knew Love is Stronger Than Justice. That's quite a funky song. I've revisited pockets of this, so Something the Boy Said is good. It's Probably Me is good. I'd say this is a good album, but I probably need a bit more, a few more listens to really get into this. I do enjoy Brand New Day by Sting as well. I do enjoy that one. That's probably the first one I listened to before Dream of the Blue Turtles and 10 Summoner's Tales. I like the Soul Cages as well, but again, the Soul Cages was one I listened to after reading Sting's autobiography last year. Broken Music, which was it was a bit of a drag actually. Broken Music, I have to be honest. But that's a complete tangent to the idea of this video. So in the month of June, it's been, I would say it's probably mainly been 5 albums. I'm not really going to call the Sting one part of the list particularly. So to run through the list again of what I've listened to. So we've had Nebraska was the start of the month. I enjoyed that. We then had the ill-fated Ghost of Tom Joad, Listen. Again, if that's one that you think is good and I ought to revisit, let me know in the comments. We then went to Asia and looked at their second album, Alpha. I enjoyed that. After that, we then went to the Moodies. Moody Blues, 1983's The Present. And then finally, Blind Before I Stop. So I would say that we probably had 3 out of 5 hits there. So we had Nebraska, Alpha, and Blind Before I Stop. Ghost of Tom Joad was a definite miss for me. And The Present was a nice one to check out as part of the Moody Blues discography. There you go, that's the kindest review I think I could possibly give that album. But actually for the last week, because you'll notice that 10 Summoners Tales was the last one, I haven't listened to anything else. I haven't done the same procedure again. Because there hasn't really been anything I've been that bothered about listening to. I mean, I have probably got about 15 or 20 albums on this iPod now, but there's nothing that just sticks out at me. I feel like I've got to be in the mood if I'm going to listen to a whole album. So I probably need to look on that rack again, or maybe something that I haven't listened to in a while, and go through that. Because as much as it's a nice video idea, it's also quite a good way, I think, for me to discover music. So if you've enjoyed this kind of thing, I certainly have enjoyed it anyway, particularly talking about Nebraska. That was the whole thing that started this, listening to Nebraska. And again, it was just a random choice. It was one I'd kind of heard about before. It was part of this set that I actually got some time ago. A really nice set, Brewster Collection 73 to 84. And then it started from there, and it has gone on from there. So let me know what you've been listening to in June. How do you consume your music? Do you just listen to albums? Do you listen to whatever on your phone? Do you listen in the car like I do as well? I'm very interested to know how you best get through your music collections, because it's all about the enjoyment. I'm not being ruthless about this, going right to listen to that and then on to something else. It's just as long as I feel it, really. And particularly like Blind Before I Stopped, I'd listened to it for 3 or 4 times and I thought, am I going to get anything new out of this now, without it getting too frustrating or getting annoyed at hearing the songs too much? I find the time when you get to something else, when you want to listen to something else. So as I say, Nebraska, I thought, well, I've covered that, I'll go to Tom Joad now. And with Loaf, it was just purely, I'd listened to The Present a few times and I thought, Blind Before I Stop is one I've never listened to. Let's give that a go. And sometimes it is just when you give something a go, whether it be music, whether it be a TV show, whether it be a film, whether it be anything in life, if you just give it a go, sometimes it's more enjoyable than you think. On the odd occasion, it's not. Sorry for those who love Tom Joad. But that's going to be it for today's video. I hope to do something similar to this at the end of July, and hopefully another video at least of something else in this month. I'd really appreciate it if you've got to this point, if you leave a like down below and comment your thoughts as well, even if it's just to say hello down in the comments. It all helps, and subscribing to the channel also helps me as well in my journey here of bringing some music content to you. So thank you for your company today. I do appreciate it, and have a great rest of your day. Goodbye for now.